Welcome to the den.
Welcome back to the Den, guys. Episode 9. We had a big week of high school football last week. Before we get into that, Caden, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Just coasting. Sociology started, actually.
How's that?
So easy, man. Took an hour for a week's worth of assignments.
There you go. That's what it's all about. All right, let's jump right into this game. Oviedo versus Evans. A massive game held huge implications for both Evans and Oviedo. Likely the loser wouldn't be going to the playoffs. Luckily, Oviedo prevailed.
Yeah, I actually made it out to this game, and I thought the Evans crowd would show up, not like a single student section member that I saw. Nobody was in there. That band, though, holy cow, the HBCU vibes were crazy.
I did hear that the band at Evans was incredible from football players. They said like when the captains walked out and stuff, they were playing music. It's really cool. Yeah,
it was really impressive to see from them, but they still generated noise, so it still felt like there was a crowd aspect.
Still a bit of a home environment.
Oh, yeah. Looking at how we played, obviously we got the dub. Last week we lost 30-20. This week we win 30-20.
There you go.
Only 4 passes completed for Jerome Curry. We've talked about him a lot this year, but 4 of 6 for 40 yards. What do you think about that?
Didn't need him. He had a great, he does what he's asked to do every week. He's not going to be a huge superstar every game, but he does what he needs to do. If he's going to throw 6 attempts, I guarantee he's going to complete at least 4 of them, and he did right here.
Yeah, this game completed on the ground. Lions, we were able to get 238 yards, but not from the star that we would have thought. Chance Nixon, 24 attempts for 91 yards, but Brock Joyce, 20 attempts for 139. Each of them got a touchdown. Brock Joyce, his best game of the year for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I heard he had a lot of great runs, a lot of broken tackles. And in a game like this against Evans already a really fast team. You expect Chance Nixon to maybe be muted a little bit, and that makes sense. You get Brock Joyce in there, a really angry runner, powerful runner. He's going to have the best game.
Yeah, we ran it great, but so did Evans. They ran for 222 yards across their 2 running backs, Ladarius Pryor and Cameron Oliver. But, our passing game was still there a little bit. Their passing game was not there. Evans' QB had a QBR of 28.1. I have not seen a QBR that low, maybe ever.
See, that's what I'm saying about Jerome Curry.
Oh, yeah.
Jerome, you're never going to see Jerome with a QBR of 28. He's always going to complete passes. He's going to have a fine game. He's going to do what the coaches ask from him.
Next week, we're going to take on Eustis in our final regular season game. That game, going to be a pretty easy game for us.
Yeah, Eustis is a pretty bad team. It's at Eustis, too, so they're going to have a bit of a drive, but I expect big, high score from the Lions that game. It's going to be a really, really good performance. Good way to take momentum into the playoffs.
All right, moving on to our post-week 10 rankings. Number 1 at 5-3, we've got Cocoa. Again, they beat this astronaut team 48-0. That defense, every time they go against a bad team, 0 points. Very impressive. I'd say they've got a little more fun of a matchup next week versus Rockledge in the BBQ Bowl.
Interesting name, Barbecue Bowl. I don't hate it.
Yeah, you got to anticipate a Cocoa dominant victory, but Rockledge is definitely a better squad than Astronaut.
Yeah, Cocoa, they've gotten to the point of their schedule where they're just playing schools that are around them, and the schools around on that side of the coast, on the East Coast, not very talented, not very good. Cocoa's going to definitely win out, and they're going to streak through the playoffs, I imagine, too. They've already faced their toughest tests of the season. Coming in at number 2, we've got Jones, 8-0. They beat a poor Eagles Lake team, 0-8, no wins on the season, 77-0. Jones' star quarterback, Darian Coleman, 7 touchdowns on the night. Really one of the more dominant performances I have ever seen watching any high school football in my entire life. I don't think I've ever seen a score 77-0.
Yeah, 7 touchdowns on only 12 completions, 13 attempts.
Wow.
Very impressive for the Jones quarterback there.
Is it really that impressive, though? They beat an 0-8 team 77-0. I don't think you can take much stock in a game like this, but still 7 touchdowns on 12 completions.
Yeah, I believe the only undefeated team in our rankings left is Jones. So yeah, they got a Coe next week. You got to assume that
Coe, they're better than Eagles Lake. I can guarantee you that, but I don't know if it's going to be much difference. Jones is a pretty nasty squad this season.
Next up at number 3, moving up 1 spot, we got the First Academy, now 8-1 after a win versus a poor Holy Trinity Epicoastal Academy. That's a tongue twister right there. Really the story of their season, just their offense has been so dominant.
Absolutely. TFA, a lot of transfers they have put together. I was worried at the beginning of the season. You put a lot of transfers together. You see this in college football. Look at Florida State, a team that's just built on entirely transfers, really struggling. TFA, they did it the right way. They brought in a lot of transfers. They seemed to really mesh well. And that's led them to a great season. 8-1 signature wins over teams like Edgewater. It's a great season for TFA.
Yeah, only loss was a school not even in this state.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You got to assume they're going to ride that wave into the playoffs.
All right, coming in at number 4, down a spot, getting jumped by TFA. We got O'Galley, 8-1. They suffered their first loss of the season to Lincoln, 17-38. Sophomore quarterback Joseph Allen really struggled in the game. He went 12 for 30, 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. Not a great ratio, but he is young. He's a youngster, only a sophomore. And that's what happens when you put a team like O'Galley with a lot of talent. You put their entire season on the back of a sophomore. Maybe you look for more experience, give him more time to develop, but
yeah, he's really talented, but he's had a few performances against the good teams this year.
yeah, he's
struggled a little
he's looked
bit.
really young.
Yeah, I mean, but in 2 years, you got to assume that guy's going to be crazy, and hopefully their roster can keep up with his talent. Lincoln's just a really good team, a very impressive team, so you can't knock them too much for this one, but 17-38 is a little bit scary of a score, but it's still competitive somewhat.
Yeah, going into a big game like that, you know your defense is going to struggle against Lincoln's explosive offense, and I think that's a lot of pressure to put on a sophomore.
Number 5, we got Lake Mary. That record's starting to look a lot better, 7-2 now. They beat a bad Lake Brantley team, 52-12. Lake Brantley only passed for 141 yards and ran for 8 yards across 7 runners.
Yeah, holding a team like Lake Brantley, who runs a lot of triple option wing tee, to 8 yards that's pretty ridiculous. I'm surprised Lake Brantley was able to throw for 141 yards. Honestly, their quarterbacks usually are just runners, but.
Yeah, they had those yards mostly split between their 2 quarterbacks that they ran, and they had 3 trick plays attempted. 2 of them were incomplete. So
wow. Lake Brantley's starting quarterback last year, actually, Parker Paralysis. He's actually on Lake Mary. He started at quarterback last year for Brantley. He's playing receiver at Lake Mary. So a bit of a revenge game for Parker.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, coming in at number 6, we've got Edgewater. They're on a bye week, still 7-2. Next week they face off against Boone. It's going to be a lot of the same for Edgewater. Boone, not a very good squad, a very mediocre team this season. I think Edgewater's going to get it done that next week.
At number 7 here, we're going to have University coming off their win versus our Oviedo Lions. They beat DeLand 55-35. Malachi Walters, their quarterback, 7-9, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns, another good performance from him. But their running this game was very impressive. I mean, across their 2 best backs, obviously we know about Anthony May.
Absolutely. How could you not?
14 carries, 238 yards. More of an unknown guy, Jabali Morris, 4 carries, 125 yards. That's ridiculous. 31 yards per carry. 3 touchdowns on the ground for Anthony May, 3 touchdowns on the ground for the quarterback, Malachi Walters. Just a very dominant running performance. 378 yards is ridiculous.
Yeah, University really showcased that they can throw the ball and they can run the ball. Against Oviedo, they're bombing us over the top. Against DeLand, they run for 378 yards. Like, they're a dual-faceted offense.
Yeah, University, that offense, again, just very impressive. But I think my main concern for this team going into the playoffs is their defense.
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of games from them where they've let up a lot of points, even against this DeLand team. Giving up a freshman, 28 carries, 216 yards, and Taj Moore, that's a freshman for DeLand. He just killed them on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say from University, you saw their defense perform well against the Lions in the second half. Like, I thought that was going to be a super high-scoring game. I thought Oviedo was going to be able to put up 40 on University easily. You got to wonder maybe this was just they were caught sleeping a little bit by DeLand. Coming in at number 8, up 2 spots, we have Seminole, 7-2. They beat Haggerty 42-7 on their homecoming night. Team has had a very, very difficult schedule, but they've excelled. Bit of quarterback questions heading into the playoffs, honestly. Michael Clayton has not performed up to expectations, has not performed up to that 4-star expectations this season at all.
Yeah, we had him as one of our better quarterbacks going into this season, and he just hasn't been that guy for them.
Nope, not at all. So we'll see what Seminole does in the playoffs. I'm worried that Seminole's playoff run could be cut short by the performance of Michael Clayton.
Yeah, but they are battle-tested this season, and really I think their rise in this rankings just, again, comes out of that schedule.
Absolutely. A very, very talented squad.
Coming in at number 9, just down 1 spot, Dr. Phillips, 7-1. They beat a 2-7 Celebration team. I mean, they've had a few tough matches against Edgewater and Lake Mary this year, but other than that, they've just won good wins against easy opponents.
Yeah, Dr. Phillips, that's a real wild card for me, honestly. I have no idea what they are on his team, because a win against Lake Mary that they had, that's a huge, huge win. But they just haven't looked great in other performances, and they're just beating up on bad teams this season, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, I really like their quarterback. We've talked about him before on a previous episode, but those weird mechanics, I mean, he's led in the 7-1, but I got to assume that's it. Next week, they've got a huge matchup versus West Orange. This is probably the statement game of their season. Are they frauds, or are they going to get this done and really prove themselves as a threat going into the playoffs?
Yeah, West Orange is a really, really solid squad. They've been on the outside looking in on these rankings for a while now. A win against Dr. Phillips is definitely going to vault them in.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Coming in at number 10, down a spot, Bishop Moore. Old Faithful, they've been in these rankings since week 1, always around 8, 9, or 10. Bishop Moore's 8-1 on the season. They beat a very, very poor Atlantic squad. They're 1-7 on the season. They beat them 41-14.
That's actually a back-to-back 41-14 win as they beat a team last week.
I think that really just showcases how they have played they've played no teams this season.
Very true.
Obviously, they have a good win against Oviedo, but that's really their only good win of the season.
They went to like Staten Island that one time, but
we don't even. How can you know about a New York team? We have no idea what they're doing.
Honestly,
they played St. Thomas Aquinas, and obviously, exactly what you expect in that kind of game. St. Thomas Aquinas killed them. Next week, though, Bishop Moore faces off against Lake Mary.
Biggest game in Central Florida.
Absolutely, their biggest game of the season. We're going to see if Bishop Moore has what it takes. If they get a win against Lake Mary, they're going to make a run in the playoffs, 100%.
Yeah. And we know Lake Mary, they're prone to these losses.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that game could really be anything. And, again, another great quarterback matchup there.
Against Bjorn Noah, absolutely. I could really see Bishop Moore getting killed by Lake Mary. I could see him winning a close one, but I could see Lake Mary just absolutely trashing them now that they've got some momentum.
Yeah, in this game versus Atlantic, they had 20 carries across 9 runners for 232 yards. I really love how these new age offenses have been using a bunch of different running backs.
Spreading out all the players, spreading out all the touches.
Spreading out all the players. All right, to wrap up this episode, guys, I got a question for you, Merrick. Could the average high schooler get 10 yards on 8 carries?
So it's a bit of a layered question, honestly. So if we're talking we pull an average student out of Winter Springs, and he's going to run behind a Winter Springs O-line, I don't think he's picking up 10 yards because I don't think anyone can pick up 10 yards behind that kind of O-line. But if you pull, let's say, a random student out of Oviedo High School against Eustis this week, and you put him behind that O-line, I think he's getting 10 yards on 8 carries, absolutely.
All right, guys, that'll probably do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Please DM us any questions or if you'd like to be on the podcast on Oviedo Now Instagram. We'll try to get to those. Make sure you visit OviedoJournalism.com. Check out our stories. Listen to the Roar podcast. And, have a good one.
Have a good one, guys.